did, and then we'll trim the quilt up and we'll put some binding on it. Now, as you can see here, I'm using a ruler for my borders that I've just recently purchased. I think I've used it one other time. It just makes sort of like a little piano key type border. And as you can see, I have, here's the, let me get it the right way. Good Measure by Amanda Murphy, made by Creative Grids, in case you're interested in getting one. Sort of makes like a piano key type border. I think it turned out, that part of it turned out really cute. It was easy to do. So I've already done this side, the side on the left. So now I'm just going to put some of those famous half swirls that I like to do, sort of a free motion design. And in case anyone is wondering, I usually get this question. I'm using, the machine I'm using is technically a mid-arm. I just call it a long arm. It has a 15-inch throat space. It's called Qnique 15R, and it's made by the Grace Company. My frame is also made by the Grace Company, and it's a 10-foot long frame. So I don't have as much throat space as like your bigger machines have, but it's plenty, and it's very affordable compared to some brands. So now I will be doing that swirl design in all of the green areas. And then on the X's and O's parts, I will be just outlining those, like stitching in the ditch. And then I will be putting an X through the center of those blocks. This ruler that I'm using here is one by it's made by Natalia Bonner, and it is the 4-in-1 mini ruler. And I also have the one that is paired up with that, and it's the inside out mini. Alright, you can see me putting some smaller swirls in the middle of that green shape that I call the O's. And then I'll just go back to outlining and then putting those X's in. I tried to figure out a system for doing this without having to backtrack, but I didn't come up with one. So I will be doing some backtracking there, as you can see me doing there. But I tried to stay pretty much on course. I don't think the baby that gets this will notice it too much. So I will just keep working on this for a little while, and we'll kind of see. I'm pointing out one of my little mistakes there. I was told never to do that. Yeah, something about if you can't see it riding by on a galloping horse, then don't worry about it. But I'm not quite that confident. I do rip a few stitches out sometimes and redo them. Not sure if I'll do that one or not. We'll see how it goes. Probably not, though. I think once it's all quilted, that little mistake won't be that noticeable. Alright, so I'll just keep filling all of this green in, and then when I get to an X or an O, I'll just go right into stitching in the ditch on that and get those finished up. As you can see, I've already done several rows on this and rolled it up on the take-up bar. So it won't take me long to finish what I'm doing here. And then we'll go on to the next part, which will be trimming the quilt and squaring it up. All right, so I'll just let you watch here for a couple of minutes and then we'll go to the next part. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm laying my ruler on the 4-inch line, because when I made my borders, I made them 4.5. And so now if I lay that line, that 4-inch line on that edge of the border on the inside of the quilt, then it comes out just about perfect for me to trim it off. And I'll have a 4-inch border there. I thought I showed cutting this off of the frame, but I guess I didn't show that this time. But when I take it off the frame, I cut it off with a pair of scissors, and then I just leave a little bit extra of the batting on there, just enough, you can see there, just enough to trim it off, because I like to have a nice even cut there. So my cutting table, I think it's 4 feet wide, and on one side of it, the side on my right, I've got my AccuQuilt cutter set up over there, so I don't really use that part. So when I'm cutting a small quilt like this, I can just move it around and switch it around and do all the sides. And then when I have a larger quilt, I'll take it up to my church. We have a quilting group that meets up there on Tuesdays, and we can put tables together in the fellowship hall and trim those big quilts down and lay out our quilts that we need to lay out and work on those. So that makes it kind of nice. But this little table is just perfect for doing smaller jobs like this. So I guess that's about all I have to say about that. I think that's a 6-inch or 6.5 inch maybe, ruler by 24. And it comes in really handy for trimming up. Now I have to to admit I sped this up just a little bit, but it really didn't take long to do this at all. Okay, so now we are getting ready for the binding. And there you have me modeling it for you. And you can see my messy sewing room. Oh, we get a little view of the back there. Okay. A fast flash. All right, here we go, making our binding now. Getting ready for that. And I think I'm just going to show one time of putting that together like that, and then we'll get on with stitching it onto the quilt. And I'm using another ruler. Let me think what the name of this one was. Folded corner clipper. I can't remember who makes it. Creative Grids, I guess, makes that one too. See that little line that I'm pointing out there? That's a 1/4 inch line. And this is not necessarily made for binding. It's made for when you're doing those folded corners, so that you can trim it off before you stitch it and not have to do the drawing the line or folding it over. But it works good for this too, I think. So I just lay it there to where that 1/4 inch is sticking over, kind of sticking out. That, in other words, I'm going to be stitching along that 1/4 inch part there. I don't know if I explained that very well, but I'll be stitching a 1/4 inch there, and then I'll just clip off those little ends that are left over. And it saves a little bit of time. I have trouble sewing on that straight line sometimes, so I think that makes it a little bit easier. I'm using my walking foot. This time I did remember to put that on before I started my binding. So I'll be using that to go ahead and make my binding with it, and then just because I've got it on there already. Your 1/4 inch foot would be fine too for making your binding. And then I'll take that, once I get it all put together, like I said, I was just going to show you one, and then I'll take it over there and iron it in half and open those seams up where I stitched it together. So then I'll iron the whole thing in half lengthwise. And then I'm going to show you how I attach that in a little bit different way. I saw someone, I think it was Beth Shibley on my sewing room, that showed this, how to do it this way. I'm just pressing that down to a little corner and folding it over, and then I will be leaving a little bit of a tail, like about 3 inches, and then I'll stitch it onto my quilt. And then when I get around all the way around to the other side, I'll tuck the other end inside of that little fold there and stitch it down. You'll kind of see what I mean whenever I get around to it. And I do all of my stitching, all of my binding by machine, because I do not like to hand stitch anything. I have done a couple of quilts where I hand stitched it down to the back, put it on the front, and hand stitched it down. But most of the quilts that I make are more user-friendly. I should say, I guess. They go through washings and dryings and usings and cuddlings and all of that stuff. So I try to make them as sturdy as I can. And I just think machine stitching is more sturdy than hand stitching it down. So I don't do show quilts. If I ever did a show quilt, I probably would do it the proper way. And for the binding, I'm just using that same green color that I used on the front of the quilt, as you can see there. You saw me fold down that corner. Most people, I guess most quilters know how to do that already, but if you don't, you can look it up on YouTube. There's thousands of them out there, I think, that show you how to do that. Hundreds anyway. And I have a couple that show how to do it in a little bit more detail than what I was showing you there. So I'll just keep on stitching that on. Sped it up just a little bit so it wouldn't take so long. And then I'll show you how I connected that together and then how we stitched it down on the front and finished it up. Well, now we're coming to the end where I'm going to be tucking the end of that into that little folded area. I wish I had a little bit better view for you on that. I haven't discovered a way to put my camera where you can really see that very well. But all I'm doing is I'm cutting that off, leaving enough to tuck all the way in. And then I'll just fold that back over and stitch over it. And yes, there will be a little pocket there, tiny one. But when I turn it over and stitch it down to the front, I will go over that. You could do it by hand if you wanted to and make it look a little bit neater. But so I'll have one little diagonal stitch on there. It doesn't hurt a thing. And that way nobody can get a toe or finger stuck in it. And it works out great. See how fast that was? See, that's what I'm talking about. I'll go over that and just run a little stitch over it on the top part. All right, so we are getting ready to do the stitch down on the front, and I'll go over that. I think I went over that little part first, but I'm just using those little wonder clips and just put a few of them at a time on there just to hold it down to where I'm heading. Now, I don't think I said this before, but I use 2 1/4 inch bindings for my quilts. And I think I said this when I did my little Christmas quilt video where I was binding on that. But when I'm stitching on that edge of this, anytime you're stitching like that, then on the back you're going to have a little line of stitching, and by using 2 1/4 inch instead of 2 1/2, that line of stitching on the back is going to nestle right up to the edge of your binding on the back side. So just make your thread kind of match your backing, your bobbin thread match your backing, and then you won't even hardly notice it. I don't dread doing my binding as much as I used to because I had trouble getting them to fit snug enough when I was using the 2 1/2 inch. But see how neat that is coming out, and it just fits so nicely. And so I'm real happy with the way the 2 1/4 inch binding works. I think I had a little bit too much bulk in that corner there, so I had to take a little stitch out to make it fold over correctly. Okay, we made it to that first corner. We just folded it over, kind of like you're wrapping a Christmas present, making that little mitered corner there. I back stitched a little bit there. You don't have to do that, but I just wanted to make sure it was, since it's a baby quilt, nice and secure. All right, I'll just finish stitching this on, and then we'll see if there's anything else we need to talk about real quick before we end this video.